I am back in the chair. Yes. No, I didn't just get back from Japan. That was a little while ago. But it's taken me a while to come back to booktubing. I did record a video. I think I've recorded a couple of videos actually about everything I read, but I wasn't really happy with them. Maybe I was just in a bad mood when I was editing them. I just sort of like gave up. But whatever, I think this is a great reason to do the mid-year freakout tag so that I can sort of catch you up on what I've been reading without bogging you down in every single book. So my plan is to go through the tag, but I kind of also want to include a couple of other things. What have you been reading? Is that I think that might be unique to this one. I don't think I've heard anyone else ask that. So, best book you've read so far. I think I know what this has to go to, but let's just. Okay, so I did do The Light of All That Falls, the last of the Lycanius trilogy, right at the start of the year, and I think I've talked about it in a video before, so I'm not gonna stay on that subject for too long. It's also a sequel, so I want to try and pick something else. So I think I'm probably going to give this to I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy and The Scar by China Miéville. Two very different books, obviously memoir, non-fiction, and fantasy on the other. I've talked about Jeanette McCurdy's book so many times. I don't know how many times that's actually made it to an uploaded video, but believe the hype, it's as good as everyone says. And The Scar is a book that I read when I got back. It is a sort of... I said I didn't want to do sequels. It is a sort of sequel to Perdido Street Station, but it is so far removed. It's more like it just is set in the same universe and chronologically happens afterwards, but we're with a completely different set of characters, and you could honestly just read it on its own and it wouldn't be a big deal. So it's not really a traditional sequel in that sense. I loved it so much. We still get a lot of the weirdness, a lot of the different creatures, maybe fewer different races and creatures than in Perdido. We definitely focus a lot more on more human characters. But there's a lot of great concepts here. This is going to be a really terrible example, but we watched Quantum Mania. Not a great film, so I'm not comparing it to that, but there's a bit where Scott goes into this area and it affects probability. So there's multiple versions of him because they each represent him making a different choice at that moment, and it just grows exponentially. And I told Jack, I was like, hey, this concept is kind of a concept in The Scar. I mean, it happens really far into the book, and it's almost a side thing, but it's, again, that adding to this universe. And this guy has this sword, this ceramic sword, and it looks cool, but doesn't look sharp enough to do anything. But the idea is that it is a probability sword, and so as soon as he starts wielding it, you see the potential ways the sword can go, and it always allows him to make the right decision to defeat whoever he's fighting, so he's basically unstoppable. So yeah, loads of cool concepts. I want to do a whole video on The Scar. I've written a script and everything, because it is so fantastic, and I really encourage other people to give it a go. Okay, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I don't think I have any. I think I'm very much in the mode of, now that I'm back where all my physical books live, then I am going to try and get through as many as I can this year. And I think my answer for this last year was Lady Joker Volume 2, which took way longer to come out than I thought, and I actually bought it right before I left. Right before or right after I basically bought it this year. Bought it in the last few months. And that was one of my most anticipated from last year because it's the second half of the book. So I am looking forward to finishing, finally, Lady Joker. A book that's out of your comfort zone. I think this would have to go to Three Body Problem. I really want to try and get into more sci-fi because I think I've decided that I actually quite like sci-fi that kind of gets into philosophy and different concepts of what if. And I think it's a way to explore humanity that other genres just can't do. I've sort of found this through films first, and so now I want to explore it in writing. However, with the Three Body Problem, I'd heard that it was very sciencey. This didn't put me off. I love science, and I'd say the sciencey stuff wasn't really what made it hard and made it difficult. So this is actually very, very nearly a DNF right towards the end, which is very rare. And I actually only finished it because I realised I was like 2 chapters away from the end. I was reading it on the Kindle, so it's always a bit harder to see where you are. When I realised I was really close to the end, I just finished it. But I was very close to finishing it. Not because of the science, but just because by the end, it felt like everyone had such a bleak outlook on what was happening. And that is why I was putting it down towards the end, because I feel like that only really comes into play towards the end, whereas the first half of the book is a lot more about figuring out what's happening, or exploring this VR game, which is called The Three Body Problem and is sort of like the core concept of the book. So let's go into that briefly. The Three Body Problem is about what if there is a planet full of people, and this planet is being orbited by or orbiting 3 suns. So the idea is that when there's 2 suns, their movement is very predictable. You know, you can use maths to figure out where they're going. But the 3 body problem is asking people to predict the movement of 3 bodies that are moving around in space. And the way this relates to the planet itself and the people on it is that their civilization ends over and over and over again because either a sun gets too close and it becomes a desert overnight, or gravity goes crazy. So it is a very mind trippy thing to see and experience. But it is interesting. However, unfortunately, I don't think it was for me, and I don't know if I will carry on. However, I am interested in the TV show because Benedict Wong, love that guy, and I think it might potentially soften some of those feelings that I have about things being bleak, hopefully. So we'll see. Biggest surprise. I think I might have to go with Strong Female Character by Fern Brady. Just because this was me finally giving audiobooks another go. I've said before, I don't really do audiobooks because I'm really terrible at letting my mind wander and then realizing I've wandered and then I can't go back, or it's a pain to go back and reread sections. Whereas if my mind wanders when I'm reading, it's there. Like I could get to it. So I thought I was not an audiobook person, but I thought I'd try a different angle. I think Spotify was like advertising things to me, and I started looking through the comedy stuff and memoirs because I'd read a couple of good ones this year. And then I came across Fern Brady's book, and she narrates it, which is fantastic, and it actually became a really fun experience. And I was reading this whilst in Tokyo, so I was heading out the door and wandering around to these like either these beautiful parks or on the subway, and hearing Fern Brady tell these really amusing and sad stories about her life. It is an experience to now connect walking around the back streets of Shinjuku with Fern Brady having a threesome with a policewoman and her husband. So the great thing about this book is that Fern Brady sort of frames this around her autism. So she has spent her life wondering why she is so different, or wondering why everyone else behaves the way that they do, and not understanding when she's made a mistake. And this is very different from I'm Glad My Mom Died, because this book is told with the perspective of someone who now can see what was happening. Occasionally you'll get these little insights about autism. Things like for girls who have it when they're younger, they are far better at masking and acting normal around other people. So that is one of the reasons why they go underdiagnosed. So I loved it. It's very empathetic to young Fern Brady. She is hilarious, and I also learned a few new things about autism. I thought I knew quite a bit already, but she brought in some further insights that were really interesting. So yeah, that was my biggest surprise. Okay, so I'm going to quickly skim over the next few. If I sound like a cold, it's hay fever and I just sneezed. So, new favourite author. I don't think I really have one. So the reading this year so far has been a very weird mix. It's been a lot of carrying on with Lights of Brandon Sanderson. Obviously, The Scar, China Miéville, I've read plenty of his books before. There's a lot of non-fiction, which I suppose could fall into this category, but there was nothing I absolutely fell in love with, like I did with Scoff. Underrated gems. Again, I think no, China Miéville's not really underrated. So yeah, I don't think I really have anything for this category this time around. Books to read by the end of the year. I think after I've wrapped up this video, I will do a TBR video for the rest of the year, because I have 20 slots to pick out. Maybe a bit less. Okay, so that's the end of the official tag. So we're going to get into a couple more things that I want to talk about. So I want to talk about DNFs, because I nearly DNF'd 3 Body Problem, but I did have one full-on DNF, and that is for Demon's Reign. By, let's see if I can remember, Dave Astor Bengali? Sumangali. I will show the cover here with names on. So I got to the 60% mark on this book. I got a decent way through. I read some reviews that said, hey, the demon part does not show up until a third of the way through. That is fine, it's not a problem. I'm okay with slow building books, not a problem. I got to the part with the demon, and I think I just gave up on this for two reasons. One, the promise of, it was sort of sold as like a Venom type situation where this evil creature is stuck in the body of a person, and I was kind of hoping for a bit more chaos to come from that. Maybe it happens later, but once this demon's in his head, it just amounts to a lot of talk and not a lot else. And then add to that the fact that I really didn't like the main character. He just did not interest me at all. And so, yeah, without the payoff of cool demon stuff happening, I unfortunately I couldn't keep up with this one. It's a 600-page book as well, and I just realised I didn't want to spend any more time on it. So that was a shame. Next, I want to briefly talk about, I don't know if this would be like disappointing book or overrated sounds harsh, but I read Never Let Me Go. This is probably Kazuo Ishiguro's most famous book. There's a film adaptation of it. I think my only problem was maybe not with the book itself, but the fact that I think booktubers had ruined the point of the book for me. I don't think it's really a twist, but it's also a fact that slowly shows itself through the storytelling. So I think I did lose something by going into this kind of knowing what it was. So that's a shame. And I recommend if other people talk about this book that they don't mention the thing. But there was still a lot to get out of this. I think it was really interesting to see characters that are having to grow up under a certain situation, in a certain environment, treated a certain way, and what that does to them once they're older. You could almost see this as, how people would behave under abuse, even though they're not really being abused, but they kind of are. It's complicated. Okay, I can see why people bring up the thing, because it's quite hard to talk about without bringing up the thing. So I'll leave it there. It ended up being like a 3-star book for me. It was so good, but it probably would have been higher had I not known the thing. Back to fun stuff now, and I've seen people say most beautiful book that they've bought. So this is an excellent chance to show off my beautiful books. So I'm gonna leave them there, but first up, Tress of the Emerald Sea. I haven't read it yet. We got halfway through the year. I mean, it took a few months to arrive. It would have been more of a disappointment had I actually been in the country, but because I wasn't here for so long, it didn't bother me that much. And I think they are picking up speed now that they've sorted out their issues. But yeah, this book is so gorgeous. And I can't wait to go through and actually experience some of the illustrations properly. The back pages. Oh, they're so pretty. That's so nice. Was this signed? I don't think he signed them all, did he? No, that's fine. I'm okay with this. It's okay. So yeah, this is a really nice book, and once I had it, it did feel worthwhile spending the money on it. I'm in the UK, so I am basically spending double what anyone in America is spending on this, because shipping from America at the moment is outrageous, and is sadly the reason why I didn't go for the boxes. if I wasn't paying for that shipping, man, I would have gone for the boxes. But I just couldn't. I think it worked out to be about 50, 60 quid per box. And if any of those boxes, and I know some of them, like one of them was for his sci-fi series, which I'm not that interested in, it would mean that I'd have at least one box that I was spending 50 quid on and then not getting much out of it, which is a bit sad, but for the books, absolutely worthwhile. So yeah, I've been trying to catch up on various things. I think Tress is going to be next for me. Yeah, I think Tress is going to be next. And then next we have Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. When I picked this up, was this not basically the original art? Or has it been updated? That surprised me. I think I was expecting a different cover for some reason. That's probably me misremembering. It's not me misremembering. So that's what the original art was, and I thought the idea was that was like holding art until like it's slightly updated, but not by a lot. If I open, oh god, so that was like the Tress one, and that's like vastly different. So yeah, I just found that a bit odd. Like when I opened it and actually saw it with my own eyes, I was like, wait, I was expecting something different. I was expecting something new. Make of that what you will. Whether I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Depends on whether you like the original art. But yeah, same as that one. Loads of art in it. I can't wait to give it a try. But it's it's non-Cosmere, so it's probably bottom of the to read pile at the moment. Also, I heard it was not as good as some other ones. Don't know if people are right about that. So it is at the bottom pile, but it is in my possession, which is what matters. Now, Broken Binding, we're doing special editions of these. I don't know if these are in frame yet, but they were doing special editions of these, and I wanted them so badly. And I was heartbroken that I set an alarm. I tried to grab some, but they were gone. Instantly gone. I think that's because Broken Binding has, you can have like a membership, and so members get first dibs or something. Anyway, however, because this did so well, they did a very rare second run, which they don't do for everything. But that was while I was not in the country, so I asked my husband, Jack, I asked if he could set an alarm and buy them for me, and he did. And here they are. I'm so happy I bought these. The spine, the sprayed edges alone. Oh, so good. I'm so happy to have this on my shelves. So it took me a long time to get around to finally reading Priory of the Orange Tree. So I mean, I've read this. So I'm not actually in a hurry to read this. It might be a next year book. I don't know. We'll see how I feel. But I'm so happy to have these editions. They, like, the end papers are beautiful. Just you know, there's just some books you just love looking at. Like, and this is why I had to have these because the covers alone were already incredible. So to take it up that next level. Oh. But I think there's one last book. It's not as good as these, not as fancy, but I do want to show off one final cover. So we have in the UK, I don't know if they're a UK exclusive, I haven't looked into it, but we have new Stephen King covers. It has been on my TBR for a couple of years. Yes, I did see the films. I quite like the films. I think I like them more than most people. A lot of people find them really silly, but I really enjoyed them. And it's nice to have a cover that's not the film cover, because even though I enjoyed it, who likes film covers? But I really like these sort of like painted illustrations. And I'm kind of tempted to maybe get a couple more, even though I've only read one Stephen King before. But I wanted to own this physically anyway. I have it digitally, but I think for a book this big, I think it would help to have a physical copy. I now know this about myself. If it's a big book, physical is the way to go to encourage me to keep reading. Which is kind of annoying. It would make sense if the big books were digital, but that's how my brain works, apparently. And I think that about covers everything. It's been a weird 6 months of reading, because with being in Japan, I was reading digital books. So I was bringing a couple more books in that weren't in my collection and weren't in my immediate go-to. I also slowed down reading quite a lot. I think I managed nearly 60 books last year. And I did over 60 the year before, but I brought that down because I knew things would be different this year. I'd be getting a job again. So I pulled that down to 40. So thank you for watching, and I will see you very soon. Bye bye!